to the Trails Collective interview series. How are you today?
Doing good, Ian. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So you are feeling good, though. You just finished a pretty impressive event. So you did the Broken Ladder Challenge, which we'll get into that, but when did that end?
So that ended last Friday. Yeah, I want to
Okay,
say it was last
okay.
Friday.
So
Everything kind of has run together. After we got to about like day 20, everything just kind of every day felt the same. So I'm still trying to kind of get back into the normal world after it all.
so you didn't wake up on Saturday and be like, yeah, 34, let's go.
They had actually posted on the site saying, Richard Wayshner is going to do 34 today. Prove me wrong. And I was like, hell no.
There's a
not
limit to
not
our
happening.
crazy.
Yeah. So
So why don't you just start off by telling us what is the Broken Ladder Challenge?
so the Broken Ladder Challenge was put on by Trent Swanson. He's the race director for the Algonquin race series down in Southern Maryland. And basically, the way it was set up was every day we added 1 mile onto the distance that we were running. So day one was 1 mile, day two, 2 miles, and so on and so forth. And each day kind of had it set up with a curve until his curve was flattened. And we got down to, I want to say around day 25, day 26 was when it got down to like about the final five or six of us. And I'm on day 33 is when I finished out the last day and finished the ladder. So it was the last runner standing. Basically, the other runner, Michael Maddox, who was an amazing competitor and definitely pushed me each day, he wasn't able to complete his ladder that day. So I went out and finished day 33, and they told me around mile 27 what was going on. And it was very nice of them because it would have messed up my run at that point because it was one of those things like mentally you were just like so in your own zone. And I think if I would have known ahead of time, I probably would have not felt like going out and running 33 miles.
Yeah, well, before we get into the mental and physical aspects, so what were you trying to do? I mean, did you train for this or was it more off
Actually,
the cuff?
yeah, it kind of came up as I was originally going to be doing another challenge where it was every hour you ran 1 mile or a little front porch event. And basically, so each runner signed up on there, you'd have to do 1 mile every hour. And it was also last runner standing. That event actually went, I think, 10 days. And the person that did it, ended up doing something like 200 miles. And I was doing both those challenges around the same time. And I was a little bit more invested in the beginning in the other one. And then just on like a technical error, I started my watch like a minute early. And so on Strava, it had picked me up on there a minute early, and I was disqualified from the challenge. And this was like, the fourth hour of it, and I was a little bummed. And I was like, all right, well, then I can focus in on this challenge and kind of see, because I didn't think I was going to get nearly as far as I did. I was like, maybe I'd make like day 20 or something like that, but I had no idea that I would be able to, go 33 days into it. But yeah, there was no. I had done a couple 100 milers in April. I was raising some money for the Anne Arundel Medical Center, which is a local medical center here in Annapolis, and I was doing a for the COVID unit over there, and I had done a 100 miler to raise money for food for the local staff there. So I'd done that 100 miler in April, so I think that was a good like base ground for me in terms of I put some mileage on. It wasn't just kind of going into this, with no training.
Well, Ian told me that you had put in like a 200-mile week leading up to this. So, is this true?
Leading up to the actual event, I think the most I had put in was 135
Okay,
for the week, but that was with that 100 miler
gotcha.
on there, so it wasn't just like training running.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, what is your like general mileage? Are you like were
My
you
general mileage is like around 50 to 70 miles a week. Uh,
that's pretty stout.
yeah, so that was like my usual mileage. So to start getting into the 130s, 170s, 200s, that was definitely all new territory for me.
So all those
But
really high mileage weeks though were around races.
all those were like from doing this event.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Now that makes sense because
yeah.
okay, this make is making sense to me. Um, so how you thought you'd get to about day 20, which that means for everybody that he ran 1 mile the first day, 2 miles second, 3 miles third day. And so that would have been like 20 miles, then 19 the day before, 18 the day before. So that's
Yeah.
still a lot of miles just to put on every day. But you ended up making it to day 33. So how many total miles was that?
I think it was around 569, 569 somewhere around there. I think was the final number
Okay.
for the.
So what would happen if you guys had gotten up to like mileage that would have taken you longer than a day?
They would have, yeah. I mean, I don't think there was any thought that that was going to happen. To be honest, like when he made the ladder challenge, he made it like out to 5 weeks because he didn't really think anybody was going to be pushing past that. And when he saw that we were getting close to finishing the fifth week, he was like, he made a sixth week, and then I was just looking at those numbers, and I was like, I don't want that.
So what made you keep going then? I mean, if you look out, like I realize, like if you look out, like day 40 or whatever, you're like, I never want to run like 40 miles and then like 39 the day before or whatever. But I mean, you made it to 33. So there was obviously something keeping you going. Was it like just the momentum? Was it something extrinsic, intrinsic? What was going on?
I think there's a lot of different factors. Each day that I was waking up, I was expecting just to feel awful. At some point, I thought that it was just going to set in where I was going to step down and off the bed and just be in agonizing pain. And every day, I started to kind of feel a little bit stronger. My times were actually getting a little bit quicker on my runs. I was still running like 9 and 10 minute, 30-mile runs, and I was like, well, that's now granted, all this is mostly road. I did the 50K day, the 31 miler, partly on trail, and I definitely paid for that the next day. I felt that a little bit more. I was trying to be kind of a little brave on that, and I think it was just the momentum of it also, and then just there was a lot on the page. The race director Trent, he was really good about kind of hyping it up as it got down just the last two of us, and I think just that competitive nature also kind of took over. And then just seeing the other person post their times up, and you can't help but applaud. That partial camaraderie and competitiveness, knowing that they're suffering through the same stuff that you're suffering through, and they're still pushing through. So well, I want to keep this going and see where they can take their limits to also. And then I think I also became maybe a little compulsive with it because
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Let's like talk about this. Cause like what if you did wake up and you just put your feet on the ground? Like we've all had those days where you wake up and the first step you're like, oh, like it's just sore. And you're like, oh, glad
yeah.
it's a rest day. But you're like, oh no, 29 miles. So what did you think on
Yeah.
those days?
So on those days, I just would tell myself like I would start off in my community. I was like, let me just try and get like 3 or 4 miles down, and then I would like break the distance into fractions in my head, and just be like, all right, if you can knock this out, then you're this far away, and then I would get maybe like 6 miles done in my community, and then I would venture out into the world, and just kind of take things a little bit farther, maybe go into another community, and then work my way down. There's a city dock area, and so I'll work my way down there. But I tried to stay pretty, I would say, just in areas where I knew there weren't going to be a lot of people, because I didn't want to be distracted with, having to worry about people being around or anything like that. I was just kind of trying to be in my own little pain cave and push on through and, work on different thoughts and, a lot of reflecting, a lot of hours reflecting on different things. And,
Like what?
so I was a former 16-year smoker. And so just, kind of the process of, getting myself to the point where I was with one runner left to, try and win something that I probably years ago would have never tried. You know, Obviously with a lot of ultras, you kind of get towards the end of things and those emotions kind of start to overflow. And as I would finish up the runs each day, like, feel pretty good about this. Like you just, get home, rest up. The biggest things for me were stretching. That's what I had to keep in mind was the mileage I was putting down. I had to make sure I was taking care of my body in other ways because I was starting to have Achilles problems on day 26, and I could definitely feel like I wasn't taking care of myself properly because just the mileage was getting pretty high. And the last thing you really feel like doing after putting down that type of mileage is an hour stretching. So that was kind of big, but it was definitely like I said with the self-reflecting. Just kind of building on, one step at a time and just being grateful for the opportunity to, have, something like this happen.
So it looks like you started ultra running in 2017. Is that the same year you stopped smoking?
No, so I had stopped smoking 2 years before that. And I was doing like hikes and I started doing a couple 5Ks, 10Ks, and then I did a 10 miler over here in Annapolis. And after that, I signed up for a 50K, just like every idiot. And so, I went out there. I was probably dressed looking like I was ready for a 5K, and I got absolutely demolished. But I was fortunate enough. There was a gentleman named John who helped me out during the ultra. He was actually on his recovery run from the Eastern States 100, and he didn't say anything about it. And so when I finished with him, I thought I had done, an amazing job and finished this, with somebody that was a seasoned runner. And then I later saw his post saying that, it was a good recovery run from his 100-mile race. And I was like, got a lot to learn. So, I didn't know anything about salt tablets. So it was definitely a very humbling experience.
Well, you're doing pretty well. I still don't know anything about salt tablets, so here we are. So, I guess let's talk about like the mentality that you use to quit smoking. Do you think that some of that translates into just being able to gut it out in running? Because I know like it must have been hard. And so, but it's like for me, I think that in when things get really hard in like a race or a workout, I comfort myself with like either this will end soon or like I can do something hard. And I think that maybe like how I'm envisioning it is like you have a craving for a cigarette and you're like this will pass.
Yeah,
Similar or my
it was. I mean, I quit cold turkey, and it was just one of those things where I think for a lot of people, if they really take the time to just set their mind to it, they can accomplish just about anything. And so it was just one of those things where I was like, this is what I want to do. And I'll have to change some things if I want that to happen. And just kind of the same thing with running. You don't run 50 miles without making a couple of changes in day-to-day activities. And so that was kind of what I had to do with smoking was, didn't go out, didn't, hang around the same people that were smoking, you know, made different choices in terms of like what I would do after work instead of, going to have a cigarette, I would go run a half a mile or, something like that. Just, that was my de-stressor. I could decompress in a different way than I usually would. So, yeah, I'd definitely say there are some similarities in terms of that mental fortitude that you need to kind of stick with something. And I I'm just still in shock sometimes that I was doing that for 16 years. And sometimes I get a little mad at myself because I'm like, man, see where you are now with your running. Like, imagine if you spent that time, 16 years of it. But at the same time, we all have to take our own path. And, I wouldn't probably be where I am with it if I'd started earlier. So
So smoking is an addiction. Ultra running can be an addiction. Do you
oh
see,
yeah.
like, do you think you could see your addictive personality getting you into trouble with ultras?
I mean, I'm pretty good in terms of like stepping it back after like I did this challenge. I don't have anything and no more other challenges set up to go and do. Made sure to kind of put some recovery days in. And with the races and stuff, I try and set them apart far enough where I'm not like getting myself in every weekend to do that. But I mean, if I was going to pick something to put it towards, I would, I would rather be doing the running than uh, doing the smoking. But definitely, I mean, it is. I mean, because it is a different type of, a high in a way. When you're out there pushing those limits and just kind of having all those chemicals flowing through all the time. And that was kind of my concern as the days kind of wore on, was the chemical withdrawal of you're riding this high every day for so long because you're doing marathon distance, marathon distance. It's like, man, this is gonna have to come to an end at some point. So I've been kind of tapering myself down on my runs, doing like 18 miles, doing like today I did 10 miles. So not like I'm just completely, taking a break from running, but making sure that I'm still getting out there a little bit.
That makes a lot of sense. I know in my own training, sometimes taking like a rest day or having a day that's just like 1 or 2 miles reminds you that like it's okay, because you
Yeah.
just get in this like you said, like a pattern, a routine, and it's what your normal is. That's your normal chemical balance. And so having like a day or like even a week of like down just to like sort of rebalance the chemicals and remind yourself like actually it's okay, it's very important. And I think yeah, I think you're being very smart about your recovery.
Yeah, I mean, like today was it was a 4 mile run and then a 6 mile walk. I was just out in the woods and kind of just a little nature thing. So that was just still being out in the woods, but I don't have to run every part of it. So
So how did you fuel your miles every day?
with a expensive eating habit. That was another concern. I was like, I'm burning so many calories every day. It was almost like the Michael Phelps type of calorie burn where I was burning, just in my runs like 3,000 plus calories on those runs. So it was becoming taxing that
So you
part. But
eat,
I love
I
food,
assume you
so
eat
it's
while you're
not.
running.
What's that?
I assume you eat while you're running.
I actually I didn't do that too much. Really, what I would do is I would eat about 2 hours beforehand, and I think because my body was just metabolizing stuff so quickly that I could eat for like 2 hours beforehand, and I would eat like a pretty decent sized meal. I'd have oatmeal, berries, fruits, some home fries, and then wait 2 hours, and then I would go out for my runs. And usually, the most I would bring with me would be like one or two gels, and like a Snickers bar, and I would just have my handheld water bottle with me, and I'd go out, and I knew where like all the gas stations and everything were. So if it really came down to like I needed to get some electrolytes in, I had some tailwind in there also. So I made sure that I was safe enough when I was out there, because I didn't want to get too far out and have something bad happen.
What was the like, so how long were you out on that 33-mile day?
The 33, I think, took 5 hours and 30, 5:30, something like that.
Okay.
So,
So, I mean, people are probably going to think like he didn't fuel on his runs, but like, I mean, I kind of understand. Like, if you're out there,
yeah,
like, I know it's not only 5 hours. 5 hours is a long time, but like, if you have a plan and your body knows what's happening, like,
yeah,
I mean, it's same to be said for like running fasted in the morning. Like, I mean, personally, I just get up and go, and then I come back,
Yeah.
and my body knows she's going to eat a big breakfast when she gets home. That's just what it's used to. So I don't need to eat before I run. And so I think probably for you, your body was just like, he eats before and then he eats after. We'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And I think my body was fairly confident in the fact that afterwards I was putting down, some calories. So it was definitely just switching up. Big fan of the tacos and pizzas and everything else. So those were definitely, it got expensive, but at the same time, it was fun eating as much as I did.
So did you
So,
have any physical breakdowns, any mental breakdowns out there?
actually, my one mental breakdown was the day before on the 32 miler. Actually, um, my body was a little beat up from doing the trail 50K for the 31 mile. And so when I went out, it was actually a little bit warmer. It was like in the 70s. And so I'd been running pretty much everything in the 50s and like low 60s. So when it got up into like the 70s, mid 70s, my body just wasn't used to it yet. And it was kind of a humid day. And I was going out there, and I think around like mile 10, I had actually gotten really woozy and ended up taking one of the gels just because I figured like my sugar was off, something like that, and started to feel better. But it definitely was it was a day where I was just like kind of emotionally and physically broken down. And then it was funny because right after that is when I was able to finish the 33, and the day 33 I felt great. I think it's like a lot of runners, we just kind of go through those highs and lows, and instead of being like a normal race where you go through these, this is like on a day-to-day basis of going through highs and lows. So
How
that
did you get out of the lows? Was it just eating?
I just kept myself out there. Thought about different things to be thankful of. My mom, she's always been a big supporter of different things that I do, and she's been so happy that I took up running. And obviously, she is slightly concerned about the distances now, but that's she's happy with it though. So there's just different things to find gratitude about. Is usually the way I'm able to kind of pull myself out of there. I always have this thing about like you just kind of go down into the abyss and it's bound to happen, and you just kind of got to pull on little strings of things that you can be grateful for, and eventually you'll kind of get out of that dark place. And sometimes like I would run into random people while I was out on the road, or people would see me and honk their horns, and you know, so it was different little things that would always kind of boost my morale up.
So you didn't think you were going to make it to day 33, and you did.
Uh,
So what other things like do you think you're capable of now?
I mean, I definitely wouldn't mind taking a shot at one of the 200 milers. I think that's probably on my list, just in terms of like the strategy of doing it. Obviously, the distance is a little bit bigger, but I feel like kind of staging these days was a good way to test myself mentally and physically and see how my body repairs a little bit of rest. Also, maybe just trying to look at like stage races as well, where they have them set up, 4 or 5 days of doing like 50K distances. But there's a couple different races around the area over here on the East Coast. I'm definitely like still looking at doing for the year. Just kind of has to see how races play out this year.
Um, so you did run your first two 100 milers last year, the Greenbrier Ultra in Boonesboro, which I've been there for JFK. It's very nice.
Yeah.
And then Cruel Jewel in Georgia. So, and you only started running ultras 2 years before. So, when you started running ultras and you heard about, like you said, that man John telling you about 100 miler, was that like oh, I want to do that, or did it take a
I
little bit?
mean, it took a little bit because when I did that 50K, I was so broken from it, and it was the first time I had gone on such a high, and then like I was literally like depressed, like 30 minutes after it finished, because I was like, well, what do I do now? And then I took some time to kind of process everything and just enjoy the experience. And as the races have kind of gone along, I've learned how to emotionally handle everything that kind of goes along with it a little bit better. And then I think once I completed my first 50 miler, that's when I was like, okay, I think there's 100 maybe in like a year or two. And then the 100 just kind of came around naturally, where I was looking at Cruel Jewel, but I needed a qualifying 100-mile race. And so Greenbrier was a good stepping stone for that, because Cruel Jewel was a wake up call in terms of like what I needed. Like, you know, people were like, hey, you run 100-mile races. That's amazing. You're incredible. And I was like, no, the people I saw at this race running these things, they were incredible. I was like, I have a lot of work to do.
What happened?
It was just everything and anything.
Okay.
It was definitely it was a really fun experience. I made some really good friends along the way on that race. And then I also thought I was going to die probably like 3 or 4 times. I ran out of water one time, and I was like literally, I think, half a mile away from the last unmanned water station. But I ended up drinking a little bit of stream water, because I thought that I was like, I don't know, it's the middle of the night. I haven't seen anybody. I'm delirious. I've been up for 40 hours. And I was like, one problem at a time. And then I found the water station. I was like, you're an idiot. But I made it through, and that was really cool because I did that without a pacer. And so that was a fun experience just in terms of trying to push it through. But my mom had actually come out to crew for me, and I was under the impression it would be a good idea. And then afterwards, I was like, that was a terrible idea, because it was probably more stressful for her the whole time. But it was fun for her to see kind of the experience of like what goes on, and just watching people looking like they're ready to crumble and then kind of push through. And um, that was a big boy race that once I finished it, I was like, man, I think you're kind of capable of some stuff out west, or different things. So
Well, to be fair, our trails are harder than out west.
yeah,
So, I
much
mean,
more
I think
technical.
I'm definitely capable of going out west. But what we're doing here at the Trails Collective is to change that conversation, because we think people should come here.
Yeah,
But
no,
no, I
and
understand
that's
what you
definitely
mean.
like the one I'm looking at that I just got off the wait list for was the World's End 100K. So looking at doing that one. Pennsylvania and New York definitely have some great spots. In Maryland, it's kind of tough sometimes to find anything with really good vertical gain on it. So we have to travel up. I've been up to the Ithaca area a few times, and so I always like that area. I go hiking through the Buttermilk Falls area over
You
there.
race.
Yeah. And so actually, I was looking at that one, and then I just wasn't sure with everything that was going on. So
Yeah, it's
um,
technically July 18th, but we'll see.
yeah, well, maybe make it over there.
Gonna have to taper down your mileage a little bit. So you say so what do you do? Because I mean, I'm assuming that like all this running and then all the eating, and then you probably just want to like sit for the rest of your day. So what is your job?
So I was the studio manager for a fitness company, for Orange Theory Fitness.
Okay.
And then so with fitness studios being closed down, they had us doing a little bit of admin work, but otherwise we've been furloughed on that until they open back up. So that's why this was a little bit easier for me to kind of put down that mileage. I had a little bit more free time to do those type of things.
So let's talk about that. Where do you guys see, like, are you guys going to open? Like, what do you know? How are you putting in
I think I,
protocols?
I think for right now they're looking at some point in June to open back up. It's also on a state level and county level in terms of those things. So everywhere is a little bit different, and then it's also dependent on like the ownership and how they want to do things because it's a franchise-based company. So they have corporate guidelines they have to follow, but it's also at the discretion of the ownership. But
Okay.
I would imagine probably coming like early June.
Okay. Yeah, we have one. They just put it in, like it was supposed to open in March, and
Yeah.
it's not open yet. And then the cafe that I manage is inside of a fitness center, so they've also said like June, but I'll be interested to see. It's just it's very interesting, but I'm very glad that my exercise of choice is outside.
Likewise.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. Did you play sports in high school?
So I played a little bit of basketball and lacrosse, but otherwise I was more into like rock climbing, snowboarding. Those were my kind of go-to.
Okay. And where did you go to college?
I went to Carroll College in Helena, Montana.
Okay. And how did you get involved with Orange Theory?
In Orange Theory, actually, it happened to be somebody that I used to work with. They were taking over a place here in Annapolis, and they were getting ready to open up the studio, and they asked if I'd like to come in there. So, I started off just kind of working the sales, and then took over as the studio manager about a year later.
Okay, okay, that's neat.
Yeah.
Um, so goal races, do you have any that you, when things start, like let's just say that everything opens back up, where would you like to go next?
For the next race, let's see. Um,
Do you like flatter courses or do you like elevation or
I like elevation.
why?
I just like running hills. It's just, I mean, even most of the stuff I did for this challenge was road based, but I would try and find any roads that had some hills on it just because I like the fluctuation. I don't like to just run completely on flat surface. And I like the challenge. It's just kind of one of those things where, you kind of work to get to the top of the hill and then enjoy it for a minute and then work on the next one. Although with Cruel Jewel, it was definitely one of those things where 32,000 feet was that was pushing it a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty gnarly race, especially if was it hot?
uh, it was muggy, I would say, a better way of putting it. It wasn't like extremely hot, but at night, like when you would hope it would cool down, there was just no relief.
So where do you live right now?
I'm in Annapolis, Maryland.
Okay, so are most of your races on the East Coast?
Yeah. So I actually haven't traveled out west for anything. Everything I've done is East Coast, and I've loved all of it because it's been really good. Just like practicing on the technical terrain, Pennsylvania, all the rocks, um, and I'd like to get up to Vermont, somewhere like that, do a race. Georgia was the farthest I've actually traveled for a race to do the Cruel Jewel. Everything else has been Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland based.
So who's your local like running company? Is it Annapolis Running?
So like the group that I go through is Charm City Run in Annapolis.
Okay.
They actually helped me out a lot during this challenge. Eddie Kelly, who's the store manager there, she definitely kind of made sure she's kind of babied me a little bit along my running journey because I came in originally like in the wrong size shoe, just a complete mess. And she, when I started doing the ultras, and so she fixed me up and has always kind of like looked after me. And when she found out that this challenge was going on, she kind of made sure that I was properly taken care of.
That's cool. It kind of sounds like how um I feel like Ian was with me in the beginning too. Like I went up a half size of shoe. Like I've done all that stuff. So
Yeah.
no, I completely understand. It's just you need that one person to take you under their wing.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, that's really cool. So to close our interview, I just want you to, where can people find you? Instagram, Strava, do you have a website?
For Instagram, it's just Run Rich Run 83, and then on Strava, it's Richard Wayshner. No websites, just I'm kind of just like a little grunt runner that just kind of go out there and enjoy it, and enjoy more doing the trail running. Doing 400 plus miles of road running was it was a fun experience, but I'd rather get back to the trails.
I understand. My friend Amelia and I we took part in the quarantine backyard ultra, and we
Yeah,
had a hard stop after 40 miles, but we did the same like route for that 40 miles, like 4 miles, and I haven't run there since. I'm like, oh, I got enough back in May or in March.
that yeah, that was actually I did that one as like kind of the first challenge during the whole quarantine thing, and I got to hour 20, and I was starting to have a little bit of pain, and I was like, no, I'll just call it a day. But I'd done it in my neighborhood, and there's an elementary school, and so basically I just ran laps around the elementary school. And when I counted it down, it was like around 1,010 loops uh, around the elementary school. So when I run out of my community, I always have like a little trauma moment when I pass there.
Yeah, yeah. No, we all have those, I think. Well, thanks again for coming on the show at such short notice. This was awesome. Like I never heard of the challenge, and you did amazingly well. And so I look forward to watching what you do next.
I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to put me on.
Yeah, well, good to talk to you, and I'll see you out there.
Likewise.